when they're finished talking, we are going to be exactly, if I do my job extraordinarily well, exactly at 10 minutes to the hour. We may try to squeeze in a little bit more than that to leave a little bit more room for Q&A. But in the very least, we're going to have 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. And that's also my way of inviting you to type in your questions as we go along. Don't hesitate at all. Type your questions into the box on the right, on the bottom right hand side, and we'll be able to get to as many of them as we can after the presentations are over. So let me just introduce quickly the topic here: big buildings, big data. And the way I'll introduce it is this: we've been doing energy efficiency for about a quarter century now. I shouldn't say that, actually. It's been more like 35 years since California began. But for the rest of us in North America, the real push for efficiency is about 25 years old now, which happens to be about as long as I've been in it. We've got 25 years of what I'll call soup and nuts energy efficiency programs. We've got our incentive programs that we've been running and that do a pretty good job at getting energy savings, the energy savings that we need. The challenge that we have today is we need to keep going. We even need to accelerate the pace of energy savings, and yet we've already gotten a lot of the low-hanging fruit. So the challenge is, and the question that's constantly asked of us is, how? How in the world can we do this? Is this even feasible? We look at things like the climate change targets that several provinces have already come out with, including my own. Many U.S. states have come out with as well. And the sort of targets that will be talked about in next month at the Paris conference, those targets are not going to point us to taking our feet off of the pedal. Rather to the contrary, we're going to have to accelerate this, and we have to find out how. Part of the answer to the how is in enabling strategies, things like innovative financing, bring that into the mix, benchmarking and disclosure policies that make sure that we get the right information into the market so the market can play the role that it needs to play. And a big part of it is data, and that's why we're having this webinar today. Data, from my perspective, can play a critical role in two ways. First, it can help us get more surgical. If data can point us to opportunities, we can market more effectively. We can do outreach more effectively. We can promote incentives and, in fact, arrange those incentives, design those incentives more effectively. And we can implement more effectively and more cost effectively. And similarly, data can help us to scale. Engineers are absolutely critical to the work that we need to do to make our buildings more energy efficient. And as we'll see today, data may be able to help our best and brightest building scientists to move from what I can call onesies and twosies to maybe dozens at a time, maybe hundreds at a time. And ultimately, that's the sort of scale that will help us to achieve savings more effectively and more cost efficiently. And that sort of scale is exactly what we're going to need if we're going to achieve our long-term energy efficiency and climate change goals. So that being said, we've got 3 speakers today who will bring direct experience and absolutely critical perspective to this issue of how data can be used to accelerate energy savings. We've got Bowen, who's going to walk us through FirstFuel's approach. And that is focused on using big data to conduct essentially what we'll call touchless building audits, and then still using IT to help move from audits to actual implementation. We've got Brady, who's going to talk to us about the IESO's experience with data and its perspective as well. And the IESO, for those who don't know, of course, is Ontario's independent electricity system operator. And finally, we've got Adrien Deveau, who's going to give us the perspective of BOMA Canada. BOMA, of course, represents the owners, managers, and suppliers to over 2 billion square feet of commercial real estate in this country. critical perspectives, critical experience. That having been said, again, quick reminder, please don't hesitate to type your questions into the question box. And by the way, not the chat box. Just want to distinguish those two. Into the question box on the bottom right-hand side. And with that, without any further ado, let me introduce Brian Bowen. So Brian is the Regulatory Affairs and Market Development Manager for FirstFuel in the Midwestern US and Canada. He's worked in a variety of roles across the energy industry, including in energy efficiency, demand response, and advocacy for sustainable business. Before coming to FirstFuel, Brian was part of the founding team of an MIT-based startup and was active in the Massachusetts community solar market as well. He now lives in Chicago. Brian?
Thanks, Philippe, for that introduction, and thanks to our host, CEEA, for today's webinar. Very pleased to be joining. As Philippe mentioned, I'm based in Chicago, and I work across the Midwestern US and Canada. And I think Philippe's introduction really set it up beautifully. We're really looking at what is a transformation of the way that energy efficiency is done and delivered. That's affecting Canada, the United States, and really globally. And we hope to see more from Paris on it. But for today's presentation, I'm going to focus a bit on FirstFuel, who we are, what we do. I'll talk a bit about this idea of push versus pull customer engagement and how it can facilitate greater investments and action in energy efficiency. And I'll give some examples of ways that we've used big data to qualify commercial customers for energy efficiency programs through end-use analysis. I'll also be offering an example of advanced customer engagement that really leverages this idea of big data, the finer grained data that we can now collect on energy consumption and end uses. So to get into the presentation, who is FirstFuel? Well, we are the customer intelligence platform for the energy industry. Our customers are utilities, they're energy retailers, they're government agencies like the General Services Administration in the US, which is analogous to Public Works in Canada. And what we do for these customers is we harvest insights within energy meter data. We look at interval data, AMI, AMR, in some cases hourly or just monthly data if that's all that's available. And we analyze that information to turn it into customer intelligence without ever sending an engineer to the building. And that's the zero-touch analytics that Philippe was alluding to earlier. And we do this for two reasons. We're hoping to enable our utility customers to engage with their customers and to meet their energy savings goals at scale. So as I mentioned, we have two sort of product lines, one on customer engagement and one on energy efficiency and demand-side management delivery. Customer engagement is a broad term, so how do we define it? We think of it as offering the right service to the right customer, really personalizing, and also improving customer satisfaction in the process. On the energy efficiency side, we're looking to reduce the cost to acquire a customer if you're a utility and LDC looking to run a program, and also just improve participation in those programs. To do that, we take 4 inputs, 2 from the utility, that's the building address and a year's worth of electric meter data, as well as gas data if it's available. And we add from our platform highly localized weather data, as well as GIS inputs like satellite imagery that give us a sense of the building materials, envelope, orientation, etc. As well as you could think of it as a supercharged Google search, a semantic search that does natural language processing and tells us if that building that we're looking at is a Tim Hortons or whether it's a large office building. And that sounds easier than it is. In fact, oftentimes utility databases are really out of date. So with those 4 inputs, we're able to deliver 2 software products. One we call First Engage, that's really customer-facing, and the other we call First Advisor, that's a utility tool to run energy efficiency programs. And I'm also pleased to say that we are the most technically validated platform for remote building analytics. These are a number of the third-party studies that have been done on our technology, and I invite you to go to firstfuel.com to download and read them for yourself. So getting into this idea of push versus pull, customer engagement and energy efficiency. The traditional model is the push model as we see it. So it starts with targeting customers who might be a good fit for an energy efficiency program, using information about them, whether it's the industry they work in, the type of facility it is, some knowledge of the building vintage, basic information and using that to increase participation. Now, we think we've found ways to enhance that. But what we're really excited about is this other model, which is more of a pull model coming from the customer. So in this case, we're starting on the right-hand side of the slide with the end-use customer who, through a software platform that leverages big data, is able to understand their energy usage better, use that to formulate questions that they can then ask their utility, and in the same way, increase participation in utility programs, just in a different direction. Now, this push versus pull approach is particularly relevant to the customers that we focus on, and that's the commercial customer base. As we all know, these are difficult customers to reach. They can be very busy. They have diverse needs. No two are the same. That leads to the sort of onesies and twosies that Philippe was talking about. And then oftentimes, there's competing interests for capital. However, we know from our utility clients that commercial customers often make up the lion's share of savings potential. So how do we get from this undifferentiated mass of gray buildings on the left-hand side of the slide to a universe of qualified customers where we can really target our outreach to the highest potential facilities? So this is the FirstFuel approach. We start by screening. So we might put several thousand buildings into our platform and analyze them. In this case, we do it geographically. You can see each of those bubbles represents a group of buildings. A red bubble indicates high energy efficiency potential, amber indicates medium, and green indicates buildings that are doing fairly well. That's the first step. When we want to do a deeper dive on an individual facility, we're able to do a remote audit on that building, again, without sending an engineer to the site. And we can disaggregate load, understand how much of energy is being used to heat or cool the building. We can do equipment level energy savings recommendations, and deliver this through tools that are delivered by utility account management, through print and email pieces, and over the web, of course. And then the final stage is to use the platform to monitor consumption over time. If we see drift or results aren't what are expected, that's actually a great opportunity for our utility customers to reach back out to their customers and say, hey, here's yet another chance to save energy. So how does this work in practice? Well, I'll offer a case study from Southern California Edison. And this is, again, sort of the push mentality here. So we were looking at a subset of their customer base, 10,000 mid-sized customers. And we were looking to offer them remote audits and reporting tools that you see on the left-hand side of the slide to encourage investments in energy efficiency. In terms of what we saw, they were looking to do very targeted outreach. So to an underserved segment, mid-sized customers don't often get as much attention as their larger brethren. And they were also looking to target specific geographies. So there have been quite a few retirements of large nuclear power stations and other generators in Southern California. So there was an enhanced reason to do energy efficiency in those areas. And among that population, we saw a 3x acceleration, 300% acceleration in the energy efficiency sales cycle. As those of us in the industry know, these can be long and drawn-out projects, but by having a data-backed case, we really were able to get customers interested much faster, which is a huge benefit to the utility. In fact, 70% of customers actually pre-committed to projects, and we had a very high customer satisfaction score, an A grade here, essentially. I'll also call out this example of our work with the General Services Administration in the U.S. government. I think this is particularly relevant in that the new Liberal government in Canada has also been making similar statements about the importance of investing in sustainable infrastructure. And in this case, this quote here comes from the implementation instructions for Executive Order 1369-3, which actually encourages government agencies, the GSA represents all federal facilities across the U.S., to look at remote building technologies and utilize them to save costs from on-site audits and to improve their knowledge of what's going on within those facilities. So we've been doing this work with the GSA for a long time, but certainly as a regulatory affairs guy, we love to see a full-throated endorsement from the White House in this case for using our technology. Now, to move on to the pull side of things, what are customers thinking about? How do these services actually meet customer expectations? Well, one of the sources for truth that we always look to is the J.D. Power survey. And in this case, J.D. Power identified the business customer's online experience as a major struggle for utilities and a place where there could be improvements. That was actually backed up by an additional survey from Accenture, where in this case, commercial customers are looking for greater targeting and personalization. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. In this case, a near unanimous agreement, almost 90% of customers saying that they want better targeted solutions, and yet only a third of them, a little more than a third of them, are satisfied with what they're receiving currently. So how do we address this? Well, I'll give you one example from our customer E.ON in the UK. What you're seeing on the right-hand side of the slide is a completely white-labeled platform that we built for E.ON to offer customized energy savings tips, as well as other offers for their small and medium business customers. In this case, we're deploying the software at very large scale. It's upwards of 430,000 customers who will receive it. And you can see some of the objectives on the left-hand side of the slide that E.ON was looking to reach. They want more satisfied customers. They want to retain their customers over time in a competitive marketplace. And I think all of us can relate to that with the competition that we see from on-site generation and solar, among other things. And then finally, they also want to lower their cost to serve and drive some product and service delivery goals. So just to offer a few insights on what they've seen thus far, they're seeing, on the customer satisfaction and engagement side, the leading users of the portal are returning almost every other day. So really high engagement with the platform. They're also spending more time on the site than they did on E.ON's previous website. So this means that they're answering more of their questions rather than going to a call center, which is costly to maintain and certainly inefficient from a customer experience perspective as well. In terms of energy savings tips, upwards of 10% of customers have indicated interest in those tips. If you compare this to a traditional mailing or advertising campaign where a 1% response rate would be phenomenal, 10% is really a huge leap forward. And then finally, we're seeing that customers are coming back again and again to the website, which indicates that when they think of energy, they're thinking of E.ON, and that's exactly what they were looking to accomplish. So just to review, we think that the push mentality to deliver energy efficiency from the utility is certainly a viable way to go. But this pull mentality where the customer is becoming more educated, understanding energy use data, it's something that's particularly exciting. And we think there will probably be a combination of the two approaches that works best, both for utilities, retailers, and government agencies that are looking to improve efficiency over time. So that's what I've prepared today. I'll turn it back to you, Philippe, and looking forward to hearing from the other panelists and to taking questions later on.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So let's move on now to our second panelist, and that's Sean Brady. Sean is, first of all, let me just say, Sean is the Director of Business Development and Conservation at Ontario's Independent Electricity System Operator. Sean's a professional engineer. He's got over 25 years of experience in the energy industry. I think this 25 year thing is going to keep coming back. His focus throughout his career has been on helping businesses innovate to get increased energy efficiency and lower operating costs. Sean joined the OPA, which is the IESO's predecessor, in 2005, and again focusing on industrial energy efficiency. And since then he's held a variety of roles in support of the province's conservation efforts. As the Director of Business Development at the IESO, Sean brings a customer-centric approach to the design and delivery of the Save On Energy conservation programs. Sean leads a team that's building awareness of the benefits of conservation and enabling consumers to use electricity more efficiently in their day-to-day business operations. Sean?
Thank you for that, Philippe. Let me just switch the screen here to get to maximum size. There we go. So thanks again, and really pleased to be part of this discussion and talk about the opportunities that big data has, both from a customer perspective, but also from a program administrator, program delivery setup, and where the opportunities we think are for energy efficiency programs in the future. A little bit about who we are. So the IESO, we work at the heart of the power system in Ontario, and we've been around for a number of years since the market opened up more in the early 2000s, and our focus really has been and continues to be on these 5 key things. So planning for what is both current and short-term electricity requirements, as well as ensuring that we have that adequacy and reliability going forward into the future, looking at forecasting energy demand, for instance, for the next 20 years, and making sure that we have that planning in place to meet the expected demand. We play a key role in enabling conservation, where we help coordinate the province's conservation efforts and support the various programs that are offered to customers within the province. Along with that, we also work on building some market capability and promoting innovation throughout the sector. Ensuring supply, the IESO, we work on ensuring supply through contracts with a range of suppliers, from very large grid-scale generators to individuals with small-scale projects. And we ensure that supply through market-based mechanisms, and we're currently developing some additional options and new methodologies for Ontario, certainly for bringing capacity and especially demand response going into the marketplace over the next while. Operating the grid, we're running a 24/7 grid here, and we help to we are maintaining the reliability of the grid in real time, balancing the supply and demand for electricity on a second-by-second basis, and ensuring that those transactions and the reliability spreads across the jurisdictions with our neighbors to the south and east and west. And engaging stakeholders, one really key part of all of this is engaging the communities and stakeholders. That's a very important part of what we do, and outreach informs both the efforts that we undertake, helps inform regional plans that look at what are the needs within the much more localized area within the province. We work very closely with Aboriginal communities, and we're helping to evolve the sector in a way that benefits everybody. We've been involved directly in conservation through the predecessor organization, OPA, and now the IESO. Since 2005, there's some off and on work for the energy conservation over the last number of years. There's been programs that have been available for, again, off and on for a number of years. But a continuous effort has been in place since early 2005. And I would characterize the pre-2011 conservation efforts. There was a lot of really great innovative ideas that came forward, lots of, and we had pretty solid results. What I would say is that the programs were not as coordinated as they could be. There was some fragmented delivery as we explored different ways of bringing programs to the customers. And in some sense, I think we confused some of the customers because we had different people talking to them about the same things ultimately. Between 2011 and 2014, there was a really strong movement to coordinate and bring together that fragmented delivery into a common framework. We developed the Save on Energy brand and worked very closely with the local distribution community to, as a key channel to get customers engaged in conservation. LDCs became very critical to reaching out to the customers in the province. For those of you that are not in Ontario, the local distribution companies are local utilities that work within their communities within the defined service territory. So, and now we're very excited to be moving into a new Conservation First framework from 2015 to 2020. We have a strong 6-year commitment to conservation and energy efficiency work, largely being led by the LDCs in terms of the conservation program design. I'll talk a little bit more about this. But there's some great features that are coming through, which include much more regional collaborations, beginning the discussion with the gas utilities and on how do we collaborate and how do we integrate the programs together. Starting some new innovative ideas around risk-based financing. So how do we bring some of that risk-based financing to both the customers as well as to the framework and the delivery mechanisms broadly for programs. So for the Conservation First framework, we have some very ambitious targets, 7 terawatt-hours of energy savings by the end of 2020. With that, we have a $2.2 billion budget over that 6-year term administered by the IESO. We're working very closely with the LDCs to evolve our relationship and ensure that the programs are going to meet the needs of their customers and that they're effectively and cost-effectively targeting and delivering the savings that we need in order to meet our targets. IESO is responsible for the evaluation, measurement, and verification side, some of the marketing, particularly the Save on Energy brand marketing, as well as some of the market transformation efforts. And by that we mean really, how do we build in a broader cultural change effect, or how do we begin to make conservation the new normal, or energy efficiency the new normal for for businesses and residents alike. The LDCs are accountable for program design and delivery to their customers, as well as ensuring that the programs that they offer and the plans that they're putting in place are cost effective. In addition to that framework, we also have an additional 1.7 terawatt-hour target specifically for the largest transmission connected or bulk electricity connected customer group. There's about 60 of them in the province, and so we have programs that are directly targeting those organizations as well. I mentioned this already, but IESO is very actively promoting collaboration in the new framework, both through our connections with the LDCs as well as through the gas companies and other market actors. And this is already starting to happen. We've seen a lot of plans jointly between the number of LDCs being submitted. They've submitted, all 72-ish LDCs have submitted plans to us for how they're going to achieve their targets over the next 6 years. And a number of those plans have come forward as collaborative plans where they're working jointly together to deliver. And that helps to maximize the delivery efficiencies and do it in the most cost-effective, administratively effective way that's possible. And we're exploring these new opportunities for collaboration with gas utilities. They are part of the program design working groups that the LDCs and the IESO have set up. And we're working through ongoing evaluations of how do we make this stuff work more effectively for customers specifically. So big data, is this the next big thing? I think it is a topic that we have talked about broadly. The IESO has been involved with the big data and small data for a number of years. You could go back to the smart meter rollout that Ontario has embarked on, and we now have great metering infrastructure across the province that provides a wealth of data that, if properly accessed, could provide great opportunities to look at conservation. We sponsored recently, earlier this year, along with the Mars organization, an event called the Capturing Energy Savings with Big Data, which was really a discussion about how do we take advantage of the big data opportunities that are out there. We've got this information capability, and how could we basically capitalize on what that opportunity presents. One of the things that came out of that discussion is that there's some necessary preconditions we need to settle on. We need to ensure the privacy of individuals, the data, and make sure that when we access it, we're doing it in a way that respects people's privacy and confidentiality. Obviously, security is an issue that's talked about a lot whenever you're talking about IT systems, and ensuring that we have the security issues handled carefully as we're looking at accessing metering information and whatnot, that security is taken in as a very serious component of the design. And standardization is another key component, making sure that we can get the data in a format or in ways that make transmission and access to data easily accessible under standard conditions. Green Button initiative that's been driven by the government, I think, is probably the key element for us going forward, and it seems to be a standard that is gaining popularity and could provide the necessary standardization for all of us to work effectively. So I'll talk about three main value streams that I see out there, and then maybe one, maybe it's a meta value. I'm not sure precisely how to describe it, but one, I would say that it enables LDCs, and I guess for those that don't have local distribution companies, I could say program delivery agents, better targeting, and this has been talked a little bit by Brian before, but better targeting our programs, I think, can both improve the cost effectiveness and help improve the results that we see coming from the programs. And that's both, you can look at it on an individual customer basis, you can look at it on a sector basis, you can look at it on a geographic basis. We have some examples where, for instance, we worked with Horizon Utilities to increase the uptake of the Save on Energy programs in the small business sector by looking at a geomapping of energy and the customer groups that are within their city, around the city of Hamilton, for instance, and specifically targeting those customers where they think they have the greatest opportunity. So it's not just specifically individual customers, but also how do you target a segment. The functionality also could enable large property managers, for instance, to prioritize their investments in their building portfolios. So how can we work within the data that you've got, almost like a benchmarking effort, but looking across your portfolio for larger property managers. And we have some great examples from, say, for instance, the City of Toronto, which retained a consulting firm to analyze the savings potential from their over 500 municipal buildings based on comparative energy consumption patterns. And that helped them look at their capital investment planning. I guess another value stream is supporting the identification of opportunities for operational efficiency. So how do we look at the building as a system and start to look at not just where are the capital investment or maintenance improvements that are available, but how do we operate the facilities that we've got and start to use the big data potential to drive the best performance out of the entire portfolio, to map over best practices, to ensure that we're operating our facilities, our buildings as effectively as possible. Third opportunity that I would see is more from a program administrator side, but moving into measurement and verification and our evaluation of programs, having access to interval meter data, whole building measurement and verification approaches, both can deliver additional flexibility for customers, but also manages the cost and improves the accuracy ultimately, I believe, to our program evaluation stream, because it gives you hard meter data from which to compare before and after results. It's from an individual customer's perspective, it's a great tool as well for enabling the verification of your return on investment from any capital that you've invested. We've got a pilot that's running right now with Loblaws that's participating in an 18-store whole building pilot that we're working with them on, where it's a pay-for-performance type effort where they're looking at improvements on their overall consumption based on building meter data. And it's a very exciting opportunity to rethink how we engage with customers who are already very engaged. How do we increase that level of engagement using big data and the potential for measurement and verification at a whole building level for energy conservation and energy efficiency successes. One thing that I don't have on the screen here, but perhaps I'd identify as a meta value, we talk about, we have at the IESO, we have sort of two main objectives I would say that we're focusing on. One is the delivery of the targets, the 8.7 terawatt hours over the next 6 years, which is a key hard deliverable, and we're working very closely with our partners and colleagues on delivering those savings. The other part of it is a cultural transformation, moving to a culture of conservation. And you know, one of the values that I see offers great potential through big data is more as the big data is a tool that can support a movement towards, and particularly in the business community, it can support a movement towards greater strategic energy management efforts. It can inform and provides the tools that senior executives, that building owners and operators can use in their operating arsenal of tools and management process, frankly, to improve their overall operations. So I think big data offers a tool in which we can improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness and competitiveness of business in Ontario. So that's sort of key value streams that I would see. And then, so utilizing, where are we going from here? So we've been in, as I said, we've been involved in using big data to both enhance our ongoing as well as looking at our future conservation initiatives. So we've gone through and analyzed thousands of retrofit projects to identify measures. So we've been digging into what is the history and where are the opportunities for future supply. Philippe mentioned at the beginning of this talk that we may have harvested a lot of the low-hanging fruit. Well, going back and digging through data to find out what we actually have harvested over the last 4 years, 5 years, has given us a wealth of opportunity and a wealth of information on looking at how do we best target our programs going forward in this next 6-year framework. Some of our local distribution companies are already using big data approaches to identify residential customers that might benefit for some targeted conservation support. Even to the point of thinking about using big data to look at predictive modeling for where customers will respond, where customers' opportunities might be. So again, looking at embedding big data into program approaches. As I already talked about, the evolution of program evaluation based on data availability, I think as we move more into real-time and pay-for-performance type programs, big data is going to be fundamentally important in ensuring that we can demonstrate where the savings are coming from in a robust and persisting way. And I guess finally in this point, potential for increased savings identified and acted on for those operational savings. So not just using it as fodder for where do we put our capital and where do we improve the measures and electricity consuming appliances that we have in our facilities, but also how are we operating those buildings and those facilities, and building the case for stronger persisting savings based on the data and analysis that's available through the operational practices that we use in our buildings. So really getting down to a holistic building management, which includes capital as well as operational opportunities. A couple of other examples. We've been involved through Civic Action's Race to Reduce, which is really it's a competition that's launched with our support, uniting landlords and major tenants in a challenge to improve building energy performance. It leverages the portfolio manager, NRCan's portfolio manager benchmarking tool, and it currently includes over 400 businesses with 195 buildings and 65 landlords. In the first 3 years, participants delivered just under an 8% energy reduction and saved $7.6 million. TRCA, the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority Sustainable Schools Program, and we've been working with them on assessing the energy use for 45 school boards throughout the province between September 2012 and August 2013, benchmarked almost 4,000 buildings, 3,670 buildings, and estimated what the average conservation potential is through the analysis of that history. And I talked a little bit about Horizon Utilities Energy Mapping Project. So we supported moving through the Conservation Fund, digging into and integrating customer information, demographics, GIS information, real estate parcel information, and other information to kind of pull together a map of where the energy efficiency, energy conservation potential might be. I talked a little bit about collaboration earlier. One of the key points for me going forward in all of this is how do we use big data to support collaborative efforts? Now we have a number of actors in Ontario that are coming at this from a variety of different perspectives and very ambitious targets. And in order to achieve those targets, we need to reframe the conversation. We need to find new ways of doing energy efficiency. And I think I would echo what Philippe said earlier. Big data offers one of those opportunities to rethink and rebuild how we do energy efficiency and move it into the next framework and increase the effectiveness and and realize the opportunity that's actually out there. A little bit about some of the resources that IESO has available. Our website is IESO.ca, and Save on Energy is where all of our program information, SaveOnEnergy.ca is where all of our program information is available if you would like to dig in a little bit more about what is available for customers in Ontario. And with that, I'll hand it back to Philippe. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Sean. As everyone can see, of course, a fair bit of activity this side of the border already in the early stages of using big data for efficiency. Now, let me pass on to our final panelist, Adrien Deveau. Adrien is a senior consultant at Energy Profiles, a full-service energy engineering and accounting and software services firm that's really focused on driving down energy and water use and costs in building portfolios across North America. Adrien was previously the Executive VP for Green Buildings at Halsall Associates. He is a very driven leader, manager, and entrepreneur working to move the yardsticks towards sustainability within the context of sound business practices. He's been doing this for nearly 20 years now. And in addition to his role at Energy Profiles, Adrien serves on BOMA's Toronto Board of Directors. He chairs the NIOP Toronto Sustainability Committee, Andy serves on the Greening Greater Toronto's Race to Reduce working group. Many other qualifications, but I'm just going to pass it straight over to Adrien so he can tell us all about well, his perspective and the work that he's doing. And by the way, just so everyone knows, lots of questions coming in. Thank you so much. And so right after Adrien, we will get to as many of them as we can.
All right. Thanks, Philippe. Just got to grab the presentation here. For some reason, it's not showing up. Sorry about that, folks. All right, so here we go. So thanks, Philippe. Thanks for the introduction and for all of you attending this webinar today. So as Philippe mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of BOMA Canada. With my background in energy and sustainability, I've provided input on many of BOMA's energy and sustainability initiatives. So as part of that, you know, I'm kind of in the know on what's going on there, and it's been really fun to be part of that group, and I'm looking forward to talking about some of those things with you today. So jumping right in, sometimes I think we don't realize it, but big data is already here. It's all around us. In the last 20 years, we've seen a huge shift in terms of how the internet has completely transformed how we communicate. It's revolutionized the availability of data. We really take the internet for granted for now, but whenever you stop to think about the transformation from how we used to work, it's almost unbelievable. And kind of tied into that, I've got a few quotes about big data. So this one, big data is like sex in high school. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everyone claims they're doing it. Time like this, actually, on webinars always makes me, you know, webinars are a bit different to present at. In a live audience, you can tell if people thought that was offensive or funny, but I thought it hit the mark, so I went with it. Another one is big data is not about the data, and I think we've seen that from some of the talk earlier here already today, but it's really about the analytics. That the value is driven through the analytics, not in compiling the data. It's what you're able to do with the data that counts. It's another example of how the world has changed. These are actual images of smartphones, or well, I guess not smartphones, mobile phones that I've had. You know, each one of these I thought was terrific, and the first one clearly we would just use that as a doorstop now. So with these transformations in internet and mobile technology, etc., where does that leave us in the building industry? Over the last 20 years, the way we design, manage, and maintain our buildings doesn't really seem to have kept pace with some of these other changes. But unlike a smartphone, buildings aren't $700 a piece. They're multi-million-dollar investments in many cases, especially the ones that you see in this slide. So change takes longer to materialize. But change is happening, and just like the changes we've seen in the internet and smartphones, it's happening faster than most people think. It's sneaking up on the industry, but leading firms are already taking advantage of the power of big data analytics. I think we're rapidly moving from a time when we run our buildings like this to we run our buildings like this. And as I've mentioned, there's leaders who are pioneering this shift today, organizations that are tackling this now. But as an industry, we still have quite a ways to go. We are not fully utilizing the data we have now. This is a screenshot of a BAS system showing how many points are in override, and this is pretty common. This remains pretty common today. So there's still lots of opportunity. So what role is BOMA Canada playing to bring about this change? One thing that was talked about earlier today is Green Button. So BOMA is really positively supporting initiatives like Green Button. While getting the data has become well understood and even easy for some, it is not simple. And I would say most buildings, landlords, building owners have a hard time getting data. And as a result, many of these organizations are not getting the data. So BOMA Canada is really encouraging utilities to implement Green Button as soon as possible. We believe it will go a long way in providing organizations the information they need to proactively manage and drive down energy use. Really, when you think about it, Green Button becomes an enabling technology for big data analytics. That said, our feeling is that it'll be several years before Green Button plays a significant role in the industry, it really seems to be slow to come to market, and it really comes down to, I think, that the utilities in general don't have a lot of urgency on the file. It does seem that in Ontario, the Ministry of Energy is looking at mandating green buttons, so things are starting to move, and I think you'll see this, across jurisdictions. But yeah, I still think it's going to take time. It's probably going to take a few years before it's available widespread throughout the industry. Energy benchmarking and reporting mandates have made a lot of news lately in Canada. They're widespread and common in the US, and they're coming soon to Ontario and Vancouver. BOMA has been working very closely with the Ontario and Toronto governments on the energy reporting and benchmarking file. As part of these consultations, we have issued a policy document to the province and to the City of Toronto with recommendations for the program. Included in this, we've recommended that the Ministry of Energy should mandate green button as part of any energy reporting and benchmarking initiative to make data collection much easier for the participants. BOMA has also rolled out a new branding of our BOMA Best system and platform. BOMA Best is the largest green building rating system in Canada with over 4,000 certifications. It's been proven to drive performance improvement as buildings perform better when upon their recertification. BOMA Best does this by keeping building managers focused on green building measures and metrics that matter. A little bit about my day job. Philippe said a little bit about energy profiles. So we provide custom energy and sustainability data management systems for an aggregate portfolio in excess of 2,500 properties and $450 million in annual utility costs. And our systems support and engage operations teams, occupants, accounting personnel, property management, and senior management. Our clients are large energy consumers across many sectors throughout North America. So here's an example of what can be done with big data. And we provide a wide range of advanced analytics tools. Sean spoke a little bit about this, but this is modeling building energy performance based on real-time interval data. It's a bit hard to see maybe on the screen, but there's a green line there that is the modeled predicted performance, and the dark blue is the actual electricity consumption. And you can see this building is performing exactly as expected, but this type of analytics allows us to raise alarms and flags like this when a building isn't performing as expected, so we can catch things before they go off the rails for too long. Sean also mentioned a Loblaws pilot, and we're actually working with Loblaws on that pilot, helping use data like this to verify savings through their operational initiatives. And we can dive further into detail for buildings that have additional information like sub-meter data. We can provide advanced analytics tools using this data to identify further opportunities. An example of that is here in a floor in an office building where the light color is the in-suite plug load and the dark color is the in-suite lighting. From the red rectangles here, it's pretty easy to see that the tenants have, well, maybe we don't know this, but anyhow, the lighting is on the weekends and there's no plug load. Nobody's in the building, but the schedule is keeping the lighting on. So pretty easy opportunities to find findings that result in savings. So using these and other tools, we have an advanced data analytics program that has driven an average savings of 21% at the buildings we've implemented it on, with an average payback of 1.2 years. Data analytics introduces a whole new layer of low-hanging fruit. Actually, early on, Philippe had mentioned that a lot of the low-hanging fruit is picked. Actually, counter that a little bit. I think that's true at buildings and where organizations are leaders. I think there's a lot of buildings that they still haven't moved the needle yet. But even buildings that have kind of picked that low-hanging fruit that has become kind of pretty well known over the last 25 years, I think big data analytics provides the opportunity to kind of uncover a whole new level of low-hanging fruit. So, for example, we recently implemented our program at a building that had already gone through what a lot of us would consider the low-hanging fruit. A lot of retrofits over the years, had already done a retrocommissioning exercise with a well-known firm, and we were able to still find another 9% savings on top of that through using the big data analytics. And that's at a building level. We also have a client Bentall Kennedy, who use our tools and analytics tools on a portfolio level. And Bentall has been able to achieve 9.7% savings across their office building portfolio since the beginning of 2014. I think almost more impressively is during this time, they've been able to drive their portfolio normalized energy use intensity down to 20.6 across the entire portfolio, which is pretty outstanding accomplishment. So thank you for your time and allowing me to share Bowen's thoughts on this fascinating subject. I'll pass things back to Philippe.
Thank you so much, Adrien. Fascinating stuff here. So we've only got a few minutes left for questions, and I have to say this is fantastic because it's not fantastic that we only have a few minutes, but it's fantastic the number of questions that we've had. A lot of interest, a lot of questions. There's no way, unfortunately, that we're going to be able to get through them. Certainly, we may want to think about setting something else up to follow up on this. But let me just at least start with a couple that came in early on. And before I do even, let me just, a very quick housekeeping question. One person asked whether a recording of the webinar will be made available afterwards, and the answer is yes. And then someone, Kathleen from Vaughan, asked if we'll be sending a copy of the presentation. I'm going to double check that afterwards, but certainly if we can, we will, and I suspect that we can. Now on to direct questions. So I've got one here for Brian, and this is from Pradyumna Chala. And Pradyumna asks to Brian, do you have any statistics on how accurately you're able to predict savings without having to send engineers to the site? In other words, is this just a quick tool to spec out the savings potential before sending humans in, or are we getting humans out of the question altogether? And that was my editorial.
That's a great question, and thanks for asking it, Pradyumna. So again, I would direct anyone who's interested in getting more than just my Reader's Digest version of the answer to this question to our website, firstfuel.com. If you click on the Resources tab and then Technical Validations, you'll be able to see upwards of 4 different technical validations of the technology. But I'll give you the short answer to the question, which is we've been validated 4 times over by EEB Hub, which is the Energy Efficiency Buildings Hub, by Fraunhofer Sustainable Energy Institute, by PG&E as ordered by the California Public Utilities Commission. And in each case, we've had very, very accurate results for end-use disaggregation between 1 and 7% at the high end in terms of margin of error on determining those end uses. So we're very, very pleased with those results. We think they're certainly enough to do business with. To the question about whether that is focused at the building level or more at the kind of overall utility portfolio or government portfolio screening, it's a little of both. And it's a question of how much analysis that the particular client wants. If they want to go deep down into the building level, we can do that fine disaggregation. Or if they want just a quick pass of understanding, how much energy efficiency potential is there in this customer class, in this area, we're able to do that as well. So it's kind of a both and, but certainly invite anyone interested in reading more about this to check out those technical validations. They're all on firstfuel.com.
Thank you, Brian. A question for Sean here. Sean, Gray McKenzie is wondering if there are incentives for building dashboard software that may not have quantifiable savings at the start of the project, but obviously that focuses on engagement and awareness.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Graham. There are currently incentives through a program that we have for the business community. Under retrofit, there is monitoring and targeting incentives. I think it's a starting point to be able to use to access metering and software information. It probably is not the be-all and end-all, and certainly, as I was saying, as we look to incorporating more and more of this type of approach into the programs, I would expect that over time the programs would evolve. But the simple answer is, for right now, you can make a start through the retrofit program with the monitoring and targeting incentives.
Fantastic, thank you. You know, there's so many good questions here, and I wish we had the time. I wish we had more time to go through them. Unfortunately, we don't. My apologies to those who sent in a question that we haven't gotten a chance to answer. I do invite you to contact presenters directly after the session's over, and ask those questions directly to them. That having been said, I want to thank you all, and let me pass it back to Elizabeth McDonald. Elizabeth? All right. Well, we have a technical challenge there, and so let me just say thank you to everyone for having participated. Very densely packed webinar. 1 hour to go through a very fascinating topic. I think we heard some very interesting and very helpful information, commentary, experience, and wisdom from our 3 panelists. I want to thank them very much. Thank the organizers. Thank Elizabeth McDonald of Canadian Energy Efficiency Alliance, who organized this.
Yeah, can you hear me now, Philippe?
Yep, I can.
Yes, I just wanted to apologize for that. I had a little technology mistake. I want to thank Philippe very much, and obviously if this actually came from members coming together, and so if there are other areas of interest, contact CEEA. Think of getting involved with us. I can tell you right now that things are moving in the federal side, and we need all hands on deck. So thank you. Thank all the participants very much. For FirstFuel, who gave us a lot of technical support, and we'll do everything to get as much information out to you as possible and hopefully answer those many questions. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll end it. Bye-bye, everyone.